Okay, sorry, this had to be in two different segments, but now we're on chapter 25. Winslow was curious. I have another curious one right over here. I'll show y'all. Can y'all see Murphy? He's very curious. He's curious what I'm doing out here reading a book. Anyway, Winslow was increasingly curious, testing his curiosity most often with his mouth. He ate through two power cords, fortunately unplugged, otherwise he would have gotten electrocuted, and nibbled plastic buckets, newspapers, and jackets. He licked an oil spill on the garage floor, munched on a door frame, and chomped an old tart. Winslow trotted from one thing to another, smelling and tasting. Every few minutes he returned to Louis and bumped him with his head, as if to say, I am still here. Are you? He liked his little lambs, Max said. He follows you everywhere. He probably thinks you're his mother. What? Well, think about it. You're the only parent he has known. He doesn't even know what another donkey is. He doesn't even know that he is a donkey. He probably thinks he's human like you. That night, Louis dreamed that his own parents were donkeys. In his dream, he thought, then I must be a donkey too. Winslow brayed, as if in response. That sound, oh, maybe it came from outside, maybe it was in his dream. Louis could not be sure, for he was still in his dream. Oh, that noise. And the neighbors. Chapter 26, Winslow, Winslow. One morning, when Louis went out to the pen to feed Winslow before going to school, the pen was empty and the gate was open. Oh no. Did I forget to close it? Louis wondered. I'm sure I closed it. I'm nearly certain I did. Did I? He dashed down the street and looked through the backyards, calling for the donkey. Winslow! Winslow! His parents and Mac joined the search. All along the streets were calls of Winslow! Winslow! As they ducked in and out of the driveways and poked in bushes. No Winslow, no sign of him, no sound of him. And that is probably what they were listening for, the sound of him. I can't go to school, Louis told his parents. But we have to go to work. Fine, but I have to stay and look for Winslow. Max said, I'll stay too. Louis and I can both look for Winslow. And if we find him, when we find him, Louis corrected. Okay, when we find him, then we'll go to school. They returned to the pen to see if the donkey had left a trail of any kind. But other than normal patches of scuffed earth where Winslow and Louis frequently walked, nothing seemed out of the ordinary. I hope he didn't wander into the road, Max said. Don't think it. Maybe he's asleep in someone's garden. And so they searched up and down the street, up and down the driveways, crossing backyards and front yards, calling for Winslow, bringing neighbors to their windows and doors. You lose your donkey? Haven't seen any donkey around today. Who's Winslow? Is Winslow your dog? Those are all the questions the neighbors were asking when they were looking. Louis ran to the next block and the next and the next. He called for Winslow louder and louder. Drivers asked if he was okay. Grandmothers came to their doors, peering out at this boy running through the neighborhood. Must have lost his dog, is what they were thinking. My dog used to get out all the time. I bet he's got a dog like that. That's what I guess the grandmothers were thinking. Louis felt increasingly desperate. He begged the air, just out into the wind. Please, please, Winslow, please, where are you? He tried to imagine where Winslow might go. He could be wandering around, lost and afraid. Louis had a sudden image of sledding down the hill with Winslow and being tickled by his ears. The sledding hill! The snow would be gone. The hill would be grassy, but maybe Winslow had wandered that far. Oh, maybe. And so Louis went in that direction. He was tired now. He could barely breathe. His insides were full of fear and worry and pain. He could not imagine losing Winslow. He did not want to let his thoughts go there. He rounded the corner of the road and something caught his eye as he glanced up to the top of the hill. Something or someone, was up there. The sun was behind it, and in the glare, all Louis could see was an odd, lumpy shape. Chapter 27, The Bear. Once, when Louis was 4 or 5 years old, he had an encounter with a bear. He was outside in the yard when he spotted a bear lurking beside the oak tree near the garage. He wanted to scream, but he could not. No sound would come out of his mouth. He wanted to run, but he could not. His legs were numb. His arms were numb. He could not move. It was windy. The branches were whipping back and forth, twigs snapping. The bear moved closer to the tree. Help! Louis tried to shout. Help! But he could only hear the scream in his head. Maybe if I play dead, the bear will leave me alone. Maybe it will go away. Louis slowly lowered himself to the ground and curled into a ball. He held as still as he could. His arm itched, but he couldn't scratch it. He needed to cough, but he dared not. The wind blew and the bear was still there, inching closer to the tree. Louis lay still for a long time, so long that he fell asleep. He was awakened by the bear pawing at his shoulder. No! Louis shouted. No, please, no! And this time the words came out of his mouth. And when he opened his eyes, he saw not the bear, but his brother, Gus, nudging him. What's the matter with you? Gus asked. It's only me. You fall asleep out here? Sorry. Louis looked around, searching for the bear. There, he shouted. Watch out, there's a bear. Gus followed Louis' stare and then slowly moved toward the bear. Ooh. No, Gus, don't. As Gus continued across the yard, Louis grabbed his arm and tried to pull him back. Gus, don't! But Gus kept going, and when he reached the bear, he lifted it up and turned to face Louis. Is this your bear? He was holding a puffy brown jacket. It's probably Max, Gus said. He always leaves his stuff here. Louis was so relieved that he thought he would faint, but he was also embarrassed. I would be embarrassed. He'd been afraid of a jacket. Don't tell Mom or Dad, Louis said. I won't, Gus agreed. One time, I was afraid of a moth. I hope the wind isn't making any funny noises on the microphone. All right, so last chapter. Chapter 28. Shh, he's sleeping. The memory of the jacket bear surfaced as Louis stared up the hill at that lumpy shape at the top. He was out of breath from his search for Winslow, and he was worried and frightened. He wished Mac were here with him, but Mac had gone in another direction. Louis slowly moved up the hill. He was approaching from the back side, not the sledding side, and the sun was in his eyes. He thought he heard humming. Coming up the last stretch, he was able to see more clearly. Nora? She turned abruptly, putting her finger to her mouth. Nora was seated cross-legged on the grass with Winslow beside her. Winslow, we've been searching. Shh, he's sleeping, very tired. It was a maddening thing about Nora, and about most people who did not say much. Louis rarely knew what they were thinking, or even if they were thinking. Sometimes he wanted to bore a hole in their head and peer around inside. He felt as if he'd then be able to see what they were thinking. Maybe the words would be written across a large screen in their brains. People who talked too much were also maddening to Louis. All those words pouring out of their mouths in gushing torrents. Blah, 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 blah. Did you know that blah, blah, blah? Did you hear that blah, 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 blah? I felt blah, 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 blah. I saw blah, blah, blah. When he encountered someone like that, he wanted to put his fingers to his ears and shut the noise out. And at those times, he wished the talkers were more like the quiet people, the ones that he wanted to peer inside their brains. Maybe he would rather know less, not more. On the hill, when Nora said, "Shh, he's sleeping," very tired, Louis wanted to know so much more, but he was grateful that she offered at least those few words, and he was grateful, so very grateful, to find Winslow. All right, so that's chapter 28. And I think we're going to answer questions in those chapters in the morning. So I hope that you've been able to watch all of, or listen to all of the chapters. I'll see you in the morning.